This is an interview with Muhammad Isman Kanafsky, longtime Subud member. He's had many jobs in Subud, regional helper, national helper, SICA chair. So to get started, would you like to tell us how your situation was before you came into Subud?
Well, as you can see, I was born with a short neck and rounded shoulders, and my vertebrae was somehow messed up. And doctors called it a Vincent's disease, which is kind of ironic because that was the first name that Bapak gave to me in Subud. Well, you know, when I was young, I had very low self-esteem because people used to make fun of me and laugh at me. And, you know, I couldn't stand up in front of my class because my body would just go crazy. I just couldn't do it. So my feeling is that I inherited that from my parents and my ancestors, you know, and there was nothing I could do about it. And when I became a teenager, you know, I just left school early and I started working, and that's the way it was until I found myself in 1964, the summer of 1964. I was laying in bed thinking about ending my life because it was so miserable. I can honestly say that I didn't have one good day of, you know, one good day. So, and then I heard a voice, and this voice said to me, well, you've done everything in your life, but you've never tried praying to God. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll try praying to God. And then I realized I didn't know how to pray to God. So, and the next thing I knew, I heard myself, my heart, in myself saying in my heart, God, God, God. And then this tremendous vibration came over my whole being and then began shaking me like I was a rag doll in the bed. I was just laying in bed, you know. And this went on, and I began crying and for past sins and this and that, and went on for 30 or 40 minutes. Didn't know what it was. I never heard of Subud or Bapak or Ibu or Rayu or anything like that. And I just fell asleep like a baby after it stopped. Next morning, I got up and I thought, wow, what the heck was that? But I felt so much better. I was really shocked, you know. And I was wondering if I could do that again that night, you know. So sure enough, I waited till my parents, I thought, was sleeping. And I just, in my heart, said, God, God, God. And then boom, the same thing. I went into this tremendous latihan. And this voice that I heard, eventually I realized was my grandfather. And who was, I never met, he died before I was born. And but Bapak had said that if one of our relatives or ancestors worship God in their life, that one of their descendants would be a Subud member. They were given that promise. So I'm pretty sure that's what happened to me, you know. And he eventually told me to go to this place and that place, and I met a Subud member, and the next thing I knew, I was down at a meeting with people interested in Subud, New York. And I listened to everything they said. I didn't say anything. And it sounded crazy to me, but I noticed that they had this very peaceful look in their eyes. And I thought to myself, I would do anything to get that kind of a feeling of peace, you know.
Yeah.
So I went, you know, and I went for about 3 months, and I said, "Oh, am I going to be open?" They said, "No, you didn't sign the paper." So they made me wait an extra 2 months. It was really, I mean, I didn't like very much, but I just heard the voice say, just relax, surrender it all to God. And then I was opened and with the men, and you had to stand because I used to do latihan on my bed, so you had to stand when you. And my body was shaking and shaking, and next thing I knew, I fell over backwards on my head on the floor. And I was rolling around, and I was hearing my bones cracking and all kinds of crazy stuff. And that went on for months and months and months. Every latihan was like a test for me, if I would just accept, you know. And I also had a drinking problem. Drank alcohol a lot because that's how I used to calm myself down normally, you know. And I read where my grandfather told me after I was open not to listen to anybody, just read Bapa's talks. So that's what I did. And I read where Bapa said, if you take drugs or if you drink alcohol, don't do it on the days that you go to latihan. I thought, I could do that. So the next latihan I went to, I didn't have any drinks or anything. And when the latihan was over, I was made to go right out of the Subud house. I couldn't stop my legs and go into a bar. And I thought, what is going on here? This is crazy. And I felt to order a drink. I ordered a drink. And then I felt like I was two people. One was drinking and one was making fun of me drinking. It was really very strange. And I only had about 2 or 3 drinks. And then I started feeling that I was getting intoxicated, but which never happened to me before. But so I went home, and the next latihan, the same thing happened. This went on every latihan, after every latihan for a month. And by the end of the month, I couldn't stand the smell of alcohol. It made me ill, really violently ill. And so I never had another drink since that time, after 1 month of being made to go. I still went a few times after, but in order to coke or something like that, because that's kind of the way my life was. I didn't know anything else, you know. But then I realized that people didn't like me anymore because I wasn't drinking, you know? So I never went back. So that's when I started to understand that if I wanted God to help me change, I had to show God that I wanted him to do that. And so I did that with different things in my life, you know, that I did. But the main thing that happened to me was after many months of falling on my head and hearing my bones cracking and all of that stuff. One time I saw myself while I was laying on the floor, flying in the air. I mean, I wasn't flying, I just saw it. I saw me flying, and I was flying next to a big jet. And I was amazed. I said, how could I fly so fast, you know? But I was, you know, and I was shown, I was just made to see that. Although I was just laying on the floor. And anyway, one day in Latihan, I was made to stand up. And I thought, wow, this is amazing, you know. And I felt I would never have to fall down again because my spiritual legs were now alive, you know. And I never did fall down again. And then I started seeing inside of myself. And I was really shocked. And what I saw at first was this piece of cloth. And every latihan, this cloth would be taken apart until, and this went on for quite a while, until it was completely gone. It disappeared. The next thing I started seeing material things like buildings and all kinds of things of the earth, you know. And then I started seeing all kinds of vegetation, all inside of myself. And then I started seeing different animals. And I was shown that my major animals were a cat and a snake. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And
how did you find that out, or how did you experience that?
I just saw it inside of my inner feeling.
Hmm.
And the cat and the snake, and they were always there around, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw different people, lots of people, all kinds of different people. And then I just understood that everything out there in the world was also inside of myself. And that was pretty, you know, surprising. I didn't realize that. Hmm. And then I was still going through a lot of purification. I had headaches for about 2 years. I mean, every day. Hmm. And I sometimes I felt like I had a spear sticking in my head or a spike. Other times I felt like I had a balloon inside of my head. I mean, I had all kinds of crazy experiences. And after about 2 years, Bapak came to San Francisco. And I found myself, I went to San Francisco. I found myself pacing back and forth, hoping that Bapak would test my brain. Although I had never heard or seen him do that kind of a test. But I was made to just pace back and forth and just keep thinking about it. And I was in one of the later groups that was being tested by Bapak. And he tested a whole bunch of groups. And then finally, my group came. And Bapak said, receive the latihan in your brain. I was shocked, you know. And the next thing I knew, my brain was made to move forward and back and forward and back. The first time I ever thought to myself or felt that I actually could feel my brain. I knew I had a brain. Everybody told me that, but but I didn't really ever feel it, you know. And it kept moving and moving and moving. And my head kept feeling lighter and lighter and lighter. And finally, Bapak stopped that test. My headaches were completely gone. And I never had headaches after that again.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And any time that I feel heavy in my head, I just ask my brain to move and it disappears and I feel light again. I mean, it's amazing. What a blessing.
Yeah.
And getting back to New York, I had lots of problems with the helpers. So I finally decided to write Bapak a letter complaining about the helpers. And unbeknownst to me at the time, the helpers wrote a letter to Bapak complaining about me. I guess because one of the old-time helpers from Germany originally said to me, "We're all marching in this direction, and you're marching in that direction." So I guess they didn't like what I was doing.
So what year was this? And
This was before 67. This was like 66.
okay.
66, I think. And Bapak wrote us both the same answer, one letter to the helpers and one letter to me. So I had this letter and I thought, I asked God, what should my attitude be when I read this letter? I mean, I didn't, you know, it was kind of, I already knew that the helpers had sent a letter. And I received that the answer was from God. And I thought, oh, I mean, I really had to take it seriously, you know. So I opened the letter and Bapak said, never forget why you came to Subud, to worship the one Almighty God, and put everything else aside. And I thought, wow, this is no joke. So I immediately went to the helpers and asked for their forgiveness. And they said, yeah, we forgive you. But they never asked for my forgiveness. But it didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was that I did the right thing, you know. And time went on, and oh, it was interesting. They sold the building in New York, like in the middle of the night. One of the guys on the committee was a real estate guy, and they sold the building. And they got a loft. They rented a loft in New York. And when I came into latihan one day, and they had a sign asking for people to volunteer to help paint the. Well, I was a house painter by trade, you know, and it didn't feel like volunteering. So I went up to latihan. And in the latihan, I see myself rolling this metal ceiling. And I thought to myself, oh God, I guess I have to volunteer. And I did. And they asked me to run the whole thing. And I said, okay, whatever. And after that, they asked me if I would like to get on the committee to be the house maintenance chair. And I thought, wow, that sounds pretty good. What does that mean? It means you have to clean the Subud house and take out the garbage and all that stuff. So I thought, okay, I'll do it. And I started doing it. And then I was able to go to the helper committee latihan, which I thought should be very interesting. I mean, I was excited about it. I thought it was a good thing to do. So I went to the helper committee latihan, and I closed my eye. They said begin. Closed my eyes. They said begin, and my latihan started. And I'm doing this wild latihan. And after a while, I'm thinking to myself, how come I don't hear another sound in the room? I mean, there's about 100 men helpers there, between 50 and 100. But I wouldn't open my eyes, I just kept doing latihan. And then my latihan finished, and I went and sat down, and I saw 100 bodies laying on the floor, asleep. Oh. Except for one guy leaning against the wall who had been watching me doing latihan. And I thought to myself, oh boy, now I know why Subud, New York was having so many problems. The helpers were doing cocktail parties and things like that, and I was cleaning it up. So, yeah. And then I tested for chairman of Subud, New York. Myself and another guy. And my receiving was really, really positive. I mean, it was like, wow. And his receiving was like he was walking backwards, and which is a no. Everybody should have known that. But they made him the chairman because they said that I would be too much in the spiritual, and he would be more down to earth. So that's okay. And that was the end of my being in New York, because I thought, that's it. That's no way. I can't take much more of this. And I started contacting people around the country who also were having problems with helpers and things like that. Oh, let me back up and say, before that, Bapak came to New York. Probably in late '66 or in the 67, early '67, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he said there was a member that wrote to Bapak complaining about the helpers. He didn't say where, he just said it that way. He said, and the helpers wrote a letter to Bapak complaining about the member. He said, and the reason why this member couldn't accept what the helpers were doing was because he had a higher soul than the helpers. And he said, what the helper should have done was to make this person a helper, and he would have been able to help the other helpers, in this group. but they didn't do it, you know. And right after that, everybody went around claiming that they were the member that Bapak said had a higher soul. I thought it was hysterical, you know, but it didn't matter, you know. Anyway, getting back to leaving New York, I contacted some of the members that I knew around the country who also were having problems with helpers. And they invited me to come to their groups. They paid my fare, they put me up. I mean, it was incredible. I was really surprised, you know. Because I don't think they knew anything about what Bapak had said, and you know, when he came to New York. So anyway, I went and I wound up in San Francisco, staying at Robert Nill's house, apartment. It was during Ramadan, but because I was traveling, I wasn't doing Ramadan that year. So, but I did feel to stay up late at night, every night, especially during the last 10 nights. And Robert would go to sleep because he used to do, what do you call that work?
Plastering or
Yeah. He really worked hard, you know.
yeah.
So anyway, I was sitting up late and just not doing anything, and just feeling myself, my latihan. And I heard a song came down about Bapak, went right in through my head and went into myself. If you like, I'll sing you a little bit of it. It's called "A Man from the East." There is a man who comes from the East. He wears Western clothes. He brings a gift far beyond compare, grace for all mankind. It's a chance for equality, peace and harmony, the brotherhood of man. There is a man who comes from the East. He wears Western clothes. Ordinary man, ordinary man. He's an ordinary man. Some say he's a prophet, a messenger of God. But he says he's just a man, an ordinary man. Bapak is the man who comes from the East. He wears Western clothes. Subud is the gift far beyond compare, grace for all mankind. It's a chance for equality, peace and harmony, the brotherhood of man. Bapak is the man who comes from the East. He wears Western clothes. Ordinary man, ordinary man. He's an ordinary man. There was a little more to it, but that's enough for.
Thank you.
And so then I didn't know how to write notes or anything, but so I got a pad and a pencil. I wrote down the lyrics because I couldn't remember all that stuff. And then I thought, I wonder if I could receive another song, you know. And sure enough, another song came down. I wrote that down. And I received about 3-4 songs. And then I started getting the melodies a little confused, so I stopped because. So that was one of the first real talents that I received from in Subud. That was kind of like my kodar for the Ramadan,
Yeah.
And although when I was also in my earlier days in Subud, I was making the movements of playing the violin. My father was a child prodigy violinist, and I thought, wow, maybe that means I should play the violin. And I wrote to Bapak about that. And he said, the meaning of the movement of playing the violin in latihan is that the human voice is the human violin. And that with the human voice, we can heal ourselves. But I shouldn't take up the violin. And I was really grateful that he said that. And actually, when I was in Chalandak in 71, I got sick, and I asked myself if I should go to see a doctor. I received no. So I just fell asleep on the bed. And I woke up in about 2 hours with a complete understanding of how to heal myself with my voice using the chromatic scale, the musical scale. So I found a note that went to my chest and my lungs and started singing it. And immediately the mucus started breaking up in my lungs, and every now and then I'd have to go spit it out. And I also had the understanding that I would be able to heal my whole being in 2 days if I sang all the different notes. And I did that. And that's what happened. I actually healed myself in 2 days. So I thought, wow, that's incredible, that I actually had that experience,
Yeah.
So, but I'm leaving out a lot of stuff. So, okay, so now I'm back I'm traveling or whatever I'm doing. Oh, no, I have to even go further back. I had a dream that I moved my parents, my father and mother, into Subud, New York, bag and baggage. And I woke up and it was like a dawn. And I thought to myself, I doubt if that's going to happen. I said, maybe my mother, but my father, forget about it, because according to him, if you weren't Jewish, you weren't going to heaven. You're going to hell. So, and he used to make speeches about that to me. But, I remember reading what Bapak said, just feel your latihan, don't react to that kind of stuff, So I followed that advice. And I came home one day from work, and my father said to me, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He said, well, I was sitting this afternoon in the living room, and in the living room, I had this big photograph of Bapak coming off an airplane. And it was framed and all, somebody gave it to me. He said, I was looking at that picture and my hand started moving by itself. He says, it was like I was petting a dog. And he said, I could have stopped it, but I just let it go on. And Bapak started speaking to me from the picture. And Bapak said to him, when a man meets with disappointment in his life, it makes a cut in his inner feeling. And if the man can't overcome the disappointment, then this cut begins to fester and it poisons his whole being. He said, but if the man can overcome the disappointment, the cut will heal up and he'll become even stronger for it. Now, I knew he could never make up something like that. And he said, so what do you think I should do? I said, well, you know, Bapa's advice is if you receive the latihan, you should start doing the latihan. And I said, if you like, I'll go and talk to the helpers and ask them what they'd like you to do. You know, he said, would you do that, please? And my mother yelled in from the kitchen, see, I told you it was a latihan. And she said to me, and I want to get open too. If he's going to get open, I want to get open too. So I went to the helpers and they said they just want to meet and talk with them. And we all came on a Sunday afternoon, and they made my mother wait until my father was opened, and then the women opened my mother. And they were both open on a Sunday afternoon in New York. Everybody went crazy because in those days, people had a lot of problems with their parents about, in fact, a lot of them never even told them about Subud because they knew that they wouldn't accept it, you know. And we went and we had a nice dinner in a Mideastern restaurant or something, you know. And then I went with them doing latihan every twice a week, you know. So one day my father said to me after one latihan, he said, what a lousy latihan that was. I said, what do you mean? He said, I had these pains in my stomach, incredible pains. I said, wow, okay. He was diabetic, my father. After that, his sugar went to about normal. So he was really shocked, you know. And then they moved to Florida. And where they had another bad experience, according to, they used to do latihan over a bar and grill in Miami. And, you know, people were drinking in the street and stuff like, it was a very bad situation. And my father said, I'm not bringing my wife here to this kind of, he said, why don't we buy a house? And they didn't like that. And they said, look at this guy's trying to tell us to buy a house. So they never went back to Subud, you know. But that was okay. They were open, you know. And then after that, I had another dream. And the dream was, I saw myself in this beautiful hotel, gorgeous hotel, filled with Subud people, a lot of Subud people. And they were all like acting crazy, you know. I mean, just very strange. And then all of a sudden they were yelling, Bapa's here, Bapa's coming, let's put the chairs in order, you know. And I just felt just to be quiet, you know, in the dream. Next thing I knew, Bapa was standing next to me and he put his arm around my shoulders. And he was leading me away from what was going on. And he was talking to me, but I couldn't understand anything he was saying in the dream, you know. And that was it. And I didn't know what that meant or anything. But then I found out there was going to be a World Congress in Tokyo, like in about 6 months or so. And I had never left the United States before then, but I felt I need to go to that Congress, you know. I didn't know why, but so I went there, and sure enough, it was the same hotel that I had in my dream.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was amazing. And people were acting crazy, you know, it was Subud people, but Papa wasn't there yet, you know. So I went to my room, and I just fell asleep. And I woke up in about 2 hours, and I was enveloped by this light feeling. And it was like, whoa, I mean, really strong and beautiful, you know. And I was afraid to move. I was afraid if I moved, it would go away. But then I realized I would have to go to the bathroom, you know. So I got up and went to the bathroom, and it didn't go away. It stayed with me. And Bapak called that the heavenly feeling, you know, this light feeling. So then I felt to go out into the lobby, and everybody had gone to sleep by then, you know, and it's in the night. And I was just sitting, feeling this wonderful feeling. And then it was around dawn, I was made to get up and go outside. And I was made to sit on this bench, which was all wet. The bench was all wet, but I was made to sit on it. But I was looking directly out at where the sun was going to rise, you know. And then the sun started to rise. And I'm thinking to myself, how come I'm looking at the sun and it doesn't bother my eyes? And then I realized there's something in front of the sun that was bigger than the sun. And whatever this thing was, it started putting on like a dance and a show while the sun is going up. And I thought, well, this must be for Bapak, you know, who knows what it was. And then at a certain point, when the sun went up to a certain point, and then this thing disappeared, and then I couldn't look at all, you know, up there. And I found out when I went to Chalandak in 71, Siddhartha told me that that's the spirit of Japan. And he runs the whole country. He said, and that's why they call Japan the land of the rising sun. Because this spirit goes up every morning with the sun when it goes up. He says, if you want to see bigger ones, go to India. They have a lot bigger ones, more of them. I said, look, I wasn't looking for that one. And I'm not going to India looking for those. So after I received the songs after I left New York, I started trying to do something with the music. And I went up and I spent a year in, what do you call it, in Canada, on the West Coast.
Vancouver?
Vancouver. Spent a year. They had a band that played on this farm. Lucas Hilly and a bunch of other guys. And so they wanted to play some of my music, you know. And that went on for about a year, and then finally nothing really happened. I felt, I had an interesting experience. I went in one day we were supposed to rehearse, towards the evening, and I went into this restaurant like after 2 o'clock or something in the afternoon. And there was a Subud woman in there who was like going crazy. She was like complaining about this and that. I mean, she was just really acting very crazy. And I thought, well, she must be in crisis, you know, and strange, you know. And then I left, and I didn't think much about it. And then we started to rehearse, and it wasn't going that well, the rehearsal, you know, which wasn't unusual. So it just came to me to say, hey, you know, I was in this restaurant this afternoon. There was a Subud lady there, and she was in crisis, but all of a sudden, my inner became her. I actually became her inwardly. And she was telling what happened through me. It was an incredible experience. And they were falling on the floor laughing, the guys. I mean, because it was that funny. I mean, it was really hysterical. And later on, I realized, you know, when Bapak said that, like, if you're an actor or something like that, and you're playing a part, you could actually become that person. And people would really believe that you were that person when you were doing it, you know. And so I didn't think that was what I was supposed to do, but it was interesting to have that experience and know that, yeah, that's real. That can really happen, you know. And so anyway, okay, well, let's just get to Chilandak.
Okay.
71. 71, I was there for 5 months. And I got there before the Congress and during the Congress and after the Congress. So when I got there, I had this strong feeling that I needed to sing for Bapak at his birthday. His birthday was coming up. And I had never performed really in front of, you know, hardly anybody, very few performed. Because, you know, I had this tremendous low self-esteem from when I was a child, and that was still being worked on, I guess. So a couple of guys who played this, I think guitar and bass, wanted, you know, play with me, and there was one woman who wanted to sing from her jiwa in the background. I said, fine, whatever, you know. And we started rehearsing, and people kept coming and saying, stop making so much noise, you know, there's not going to be any entertainment this year. But I kept feeling that we needed to do it, you know. And sure enough, when the night of the Bapak's birthday was, I came onto the back porch type of thing, and there was girls dancing in there, and so I knew, okay, this is going to happen. So I'm standing behind this big post, concrete post, trying to clear my throat. And every now and then I would look around to see what was going on in there. And every time I looked around, Bapak went, he would look right at me. And I thought, oh my God, no way I'm getting out of this. And finally, I went up. It was my turn, and the guys were sitting on the floor with their instruments, and the girl was somewhere behind. And I was standing there, Bapak was sitting, and people were saying, get down, get down. you're not supposed to be standing up above the host or whatever. But my body would not go down. I was made to stand in front of Bapak. And so I said to my group, I said, whatever happens, don't stop playing. I had no idea what was going to happen. So I started singing. And the moment I started singing, Bapak closed his eyes and went into this deep latihan. And I thought, whoa, you know? And I could feel all kinds of stuff going on inside of me and all this, you know. And I'm singing, and every now and then I had the thought, am I doing it right? And Bapak would open his eyes and go, yeah, yeah. And then he would close his eyes, go back into latihan. This happened 2 or 3 times, you know. So I went and I sang all the songs. I even added on a song, which Bapak gave me a little bit of a dirty look at the end of that. But it was really very helpful for me because it's good to know when you shouldn't do something, you shouldn't do it, you know. And I did it, you know. So that was good. And that wasn't the first time he did that to me. You know, one time I was standing near some women and he went like that, get away. So I was happy that he was paying attention, you know. When I first got there, he invited groups of people to come in to say hello. And I went in with about 4 other guys. And Bapak, through Sharif, said, Bapak wants to know how you feel here. And in my head, I heard, at home. But when it came my time to say how I felt, I said, yeah, I feel fine. I feel okay. And then Sharif said, well, Bapak hopes that you all feel at home here. Another great lesson for me, because that really, really helped me in my life. Because a lot of things will come to my mind. You know, I don't know if you know what Bapak had said about Jewish people. But he said one time, he said, the meaning that the Jews are the chosen people is that God gave them a special gift and that they could receive in their minds. And that is true even today. He said, and that's why you'll find the head of the big corporations and all of that, a lot of Jewish people are running those corporations because they can receive in their minds. So I never knew that, you know. But so anyway, when I first also got to Chalandak, I didn't know what to do, but people said, oh, go to Siddhartha's house because we watch TV at night, you know. So, okay. So I went to Siddhartha's house, watched some TV. I forget that show that they used to all love to watch. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Anyway, and then it was over and I got up and Siddhartha said, no, stay. So everybody left and he wanted to talk to me. And he said, you know, you look very peaceful and very quiet. But inside, you're a raging volcano. And he started laughing like crazy. And I thought to myself, this guy is nuts. Well, you know, I said, I'm not a raging volcano to myself, you know, but I was actually. And And then he said to me, when I was opened, because of the way I was born, that God opened me in my feelings rather than in my physical body, which normally people are open in their physical body. He said, and that was the justice of God for me, whatever that meant, you know. So, and that's why I had those experiences, seeing inside of myself and all of that stuff, you know, which I didn't understand at the time. And nobody else could I could never tell anybody what I was experiencing because they thought I was crazy in those days, you know. I was marching the other way. And he said that my true talent was to be a helper. And I thought, this guy's really nuts. I said, how am I going to make a living being a helper? But everything he said was true, because it all came true. I could then see it later on, you know. And every night he used to make me say, no, stay. And he would talk, and he would tell me, he told me one time, oh, Bapak said he couldn't do latihan with sick people if their illness was caused because of a sin that they committed. That he could only do latihan with sick people if their illness was raising them to a higher level.
It's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. He told me he went to the hospital one time because a Subud brother had cancer. And he went to visit him, and he knew that these spiritual beings that put the cancer into people would take something in return to take it back, to take it out of the person. So he was able to contact the spiritual being and ask them what he would take to take the cancer out of this brother. They were almost going to do surgery like the next day or two on the guy. And they told him that they wanted a certain herb that was very common in Indonesia. You could pick it off a tree or something, you know. And he got the herb, and he made the guy a tea, and the guy drank the tea. The next morning, the cancer was gone from the guy. They took it out, took it back. The doctors went crazy. They couldn't understand how it could be disappeared, because they were all ready to give him the cut into the guy.
Yeah.
Then another time he told me he went to a group, which was not his group, but another group, to do latihan, general latihan. And the latihan was just really heavy. I mean, he was really thinking to himself, wow, this group is in really bad shape. So when he came back to Chalandak, he told Bapak about it, you know, that he went to this group and he felt really heavy during latihan. And Bapak said, what you felt in that latihan was your own self. It had nothing to do with the other people. So I don't know what he told me a lot of this stuff because at first he wanted me to help him with some of the letters he had to answer with the English, you know, which never happened for whatever reason. But he told me a lot of different stuff that is just good to know, because it's hard to find it in some of the talks, you know.
Yeah.
And So then I sang for Bapa, and then before I came to Chalandak, I had another dream. I dreamt that I was sitting in front of this little house, and it could only have been in my mind Hawaii or Indonesia, although I didn't know what either one looked like, at that time. And I had the feeling that and then I forgot about the dream. And I had the feeling that the Congress was going to start, and maybe I should live off the compound, rent a house or something, or an apartment or something. So Usman told me that he would have to get permission from Bapa about that. So he went, and Bapa gave permission. So he said he would help and look around for me. And Usman was even in that dream, because I saw him walking around this house and looking at the ground. And I didn't know why he was there, but so I was sitting up in the guest house playing my guitar, learning to play the guitar, and this old Subud man came up and he said, are you the one that wants to rent my house? I said, yeah. And he said, come with me. And he took me. It was just down the road from the compound. And that was the house that was in the dream.
Huh.
And I mean, it's crazy. And this was one of the first old-time helper in when Subud first started over there, I guess, in Chalanda.
Yeah.
And I said, I had a dream about this house. Oh, and in the dream also, Bapak drove up with a car and had 4 suitcases, and I helped him bring the suitcases into my house, into the house. Crazy dream,
Yeah.
And he said to me, yeah, I also had a dream about you.
Huh.
Around that time. So I thought, okay. So he arranged not only to give me the house, to rent me the house, which he had built for his son, who had lived there, I guess, before they had children or when they were married. And then he built him another house. It was a nice big property. And he even arranged to have a maid for me. She was about 15 years old.
Oh.
And she used to come in the morning and then leave after dinner and go back. She lived with her brother or sister or something like that. So she used to go to the grocery every day, usually in the afternoon. And a lot of times I'd be sitting and playing my music and singing, in the front of the house, the living room. And one day I noticed that she wasn't going to the grocery, she was just behind the wall in the kitchen listening to me play the music. And I thought, oh boy, maybe I hope she doesn't get open. Who knows? Because I'm always in latihan when I'm singing, I mean, really deep latihan. And so at a certain point, I heard myself say, finish. And I just waited. And then she left and she went out of the house and she went to the grocery. A couple of days later, I came into the house and I see her laying on the kitchen floor like she was dead. And I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? And then I just remembered that Bapak said when somebody can't come out of latihan, to call their name. So her name was Kinu. So I started saying, Kinu, Kinu, Kinu. And the next thing I saw her soul come through the roof of the house, come down and go into her body. And she woke up and she was really frightened and she was freezing. She was so cold, she was freezing. And I tried to calm her down, because I couldn't speak Indonesian, and she couldn't speak English, so it wasn't that easy. But she finally calmed down and then she was okay. But I thought, well, she must have got open, listening to my music, so, or whatever. But I felt she might, when she was in the kitchen that time, I felt she might get open. I mean, because that can happen to people. Anyway, so after that, then when I saw inside of myself in the early days, I saw my sukmas. I don't know if you know what those are, but Papa and Ibu Rahayu talk about them. They're spiritual fine bodies, and each one represents a different lower force. So the black one represents the material, the red one represents the vegetable, and the yellow one represents the animal. And they all have the shape of my body, but that's it, just the shape, but they're all just a spiritual body, fine body. But I never could see the white one. And I wondered why don't I see the white one? But I didn't understand, so I just let it go and I didn't think about it anymore, So during the World Congress in Chalandak, I came into the compound from my little house down the road. and it was between 6 and 7 in the evening, so it was dark already. And nobody was around because I guess they were all getting ready to go to the Congress, And I got to a certain point, and I was made to stop. I couldn't move my body. All I could do was look up. So I looked up, and this white ball of light came down, went into my head. My whole head became white, and then it went into myself. And then I was able to walk again. And after that, from that time on, I was able to see my white sukma in my body, in my inner feeling. So I thought, wow, that's nice. And the next day, Bapa's grandson, Aji, came over to me, who never talked to me before. So, never.
Oh.
If he saw me, he'd go the other way. And he said to me, would you show me how to play the guitar the way you play it? Teach me how to play it? And I thought, because I received to play with one chord for each one of my songs. And it was just a strum. And the strum, according to Siddhartha, was La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. That was the rhythm that I was playing. And he said that's the way people played music originally, to worship God. So I said, Aji, he took me into the house. I said, Aji, isn't it true that before yesterday you didn't like me at all? He says, yeah, it's true, it's true. I said, and Is it because of my experience last night? Did Bapak tell you about my experience receiving the white ball of light? You said, yeah, Bapak told me. And then a whole thing came to me. And it was to tell Aji, well, I'll just tell you what I told him. I said, Aji, you know, you think people like you because of you. But actually, they like you because of Bapa, because they want to be closer to Bapa, and they feel that being closer to you will get them closer to Bapa. And he started to get angry at me. But I just was made to tell him that. And I had a feeling it was Bapa was getting me to do that. And so it never got to the guitar thing because he wanted me to leave. But that was okay. I just felt that I needed to do it. I never went into the Congress talks because my feet would not go in. I was made to walk around all the way around the building, the latihan hall and the Chalandak. In fact, I was there for the first night that it was open. Bapa went in and he did a latihan by himself in there. And then the next day, the hall was open. It was really incredible. But anyway, I was made to walk around, and I was having all kinds of different experiences, seeing this, seeing that, and seemed to be okay with Bapa. And then one day, towards the end, I think it was the last talk, I went into one of the coffee shops, and there was this guy, this old helper, I forget his name. Well, you know, everybody's Pak this or Mas that. But he was one of the older helpers. And he was sitting there and eating, you know. And he says, come, sit. Okay. And he told me the story about his wife drove her car up into the mountains, and the car broke down. And there was nobody around, nothing around. But she was able to contact him spiritually and tell him what happened. And he was able to tell her how to fix the car. And she was able to drive down off the mountain.
Huh.
I don't know why he told me that, but he felt to tell me that. People kept telling me stuff, you know. And then when he was finished eating, he said to me, come on. And he took me over to the latihan hall where Bapa was ending his talk. And he said, stay here. So I said, okay. But there was no place to sit down. And just at that moment, somebody got up and left. So I sat down. And then Bapa said, and some people have a clown inside of themselves. And my eyes closed, and I saw this pure white clown inside of myself. I said, what the heck is going on here? And I forget what else he said at the end, but it really had to do with, I guess, some of my talents, you know, and that was it. And that was the last talk. Next thing that happened after that was that I did this tremendous, I don't remember if I heard about, my father died. I don't remember if I heard about it before he died, before the latihan that I did, or after. I don't remember how it went. But all I remember is I did this tremendous latihan, and I went, whoa, and it was just incredible latihan. And that was right just around the time my father died. So I thought, wow, that really is something. And then all of a sudden, I didn't like the taste of the food in Jalandhar. I started to taste like hamburgers and American food, you know. So I thought, okay, I guess I got to go back, you know, be with my mother. And then I said to Muhammad Isman, please, I don't know why. I had received my name in latihan, Muhammad Isman Kanafsky, Muhammad Isman, over and over and over again. I would say it. That's why I became a Muslim eventually, because I figured, how could I go around and go into a synagogue with a name like Muhammad Isman Kanafsky? So I asked Usman to please tell Bapak that I'm now going to use that name officially. I'm going to make it official and really use it. I was already using it, but not officially, you know. And so the next day before I left, Usman came over to me and he says, Papa came to my house last night. And I told him what you wanted me to tell him, you know. And Papa asked him if I had received a name in latihan. And he said, yes, he received it in latihan. And Papa said that was my true name. And boy, that brought tears to my eyes. And then I left. And in fact, I went to the airport, and somehow the Subud people in the office there in Subud, they didn't give me the right paperwork to leave the country. So the guy said to me, you can't leave. I said, what do you mean I can't leave? He said, well, you don't have the right paperwork, you know, right? And I just looked at the guy and said, my father just died, and I have to go home. And he said, okay. And he let me go.
Huh.
But he wasn't, you know, they weren't going to let me leave Indonesia. I don't know why I've had all these different things happen to me, but they do.
Quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And I got back. I wound up having to take care of my grandmother, who was dying. And
Was your mother still alive at this point?
no, she died when she was 98. Wow. I mean,
She died before your father?
my father was 63.
Huh.
Well, she died way after my father died.
Yeah.
She remarried and did a whole other thing.
Okay.
So, but it's interesting that I was the one that took care of my grandfather's wife when she was dying. And I even remember asking God if I should do latihan, and I received, it's not necessary. Nothing. I don't need to do anything. Just whatever I had to do, you know, physical.
Yeah.
And then after that, after she died, I went back to California, and I started. I got into sales. You know, I don't know why I got into sales, but I thought I had no schooling. I had no, you know, I didn't go to college or anything like that. And I thought the easiest thing I could do would be sales, because I could sell, you know. So I started doing sales. And in between, I became a California regional helper. Rashad Hopkins was on the regional helper team that time, and he wanted me to be on. I said, okay. He contacted me. So I became a helper for part of a term and then a full term, a regional helper. And I was selling originally advertising for the Auto Trader magazine, something like that, on the phone. I just worked on the phone. And I guess Rashad heard that's what I did for a living, you know, and he was selling his artwork on the phone in where he lived up you know, before you get up to just Marin, in Marin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had like a big place there where he had all his stuff. And I went up there and I quit my job with the Auto Trader, and I was selling art. And after about 3 months or so, he decided to shut down his business and go up to Oregon.
Oh.
I thought to myself, what am I doing here? I had a good job, and here I am now. And Leonard Keir, who had worked with Rashad for many years, said, let's do our own gallery. So we started looking for a gallery, and I found a little gallery up in Sonoma, in a courtyard, a little courtyard. And we were in the back of the courtyard. Didn't even have a bathroom in there, in the place. You had to go into the restaurant. Even if when they were closed, they would leave the door open so that people could use the bathroom. It was the only bathroom in the place. So, you know, it was hard because it was not a great location. So we were struggling. And I went to go into the bathroom one day. And it was dark in there, you know. And I was walking towards the bathroom, and Bapak was standing in front of the bathroom door. A spiritual body. And he said to me, he was still alive then, by the way. And he said to me, I'm going to help you in the art business. And then he disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went back to my partner and I said, Leonard, I just saw Bapak, and he said he's going to help me in the art business. And he started testing, is it true? Is it right? Is it, you know? And he's receiving, yeah, it was a real experience, you know. Shortly after that, we had to file bankruptcy because business was so bad, you know. And but Leonard was such a nice person that he gave me some art from the gallery that he owned, and to take with me. So that got me back to Carmel in California. And lots of galleries at that time in Carmel. So one day I decided, well, I'll go and see if I can place some of my artwork in the gallery, and sell some. So I went only to a few galleries, and one also was in a courtyard, not a great location. And the guy said he would think about it. And that evening, I gave him my phone number. He called me and he said to me, would I be interested in taking over his gallery? And I thought, what the? I said, well, I'll come tomorrow and we'll talk about it, And sure enough, I wound up taking over this guy's gallery, who wanted to spend more time at home with his wife and child, and his artwork. So it was my artwork and his artwork, and it was like my gallery. So although it was still under his name, but and I stayed there for I don't know how long, maybe 6 months to a year or whatever, And the next thing I know, a guy comes into my gallery and he says, are you the guy that wants to rent my gallery? I said, oh, where's your gallery? And it was further up the street in another courtyard, but it seemed like a better location,
Oh.
And I said to the guy, well, before we go any further, let me tell you, I just filed bankruptcy not too long ago. He said, yeah, that's okay. Everybody deserves another chance or a second chance. So I wound up getting that gallery for myself from this guy. And then the World Congress was coming up in Spokane. And I couldn't go because I didn't have, I was hardly getting by to pay my rent in this gallery. Mm-hmm. And but there was a woman, an old Subud woman from England. I forget her name. And she took me, my wife and my daughter, who was just born not long before then, she was taking them up there. And then she said that I have to go also, and that she would pay for everything. So I thought, what a deal. So I got somebody to watch my gallery. And I went to the Spokane gallery, the Spokane Congress.
Yeah.
And I'm there and I'm thinking to myself, what should I do? So I just kind of try to receive what to do. And I start saying SICA, SICA. So I thought, okay, I looked on the thing and there was a SICA meeting. And Leonard Hitchcock was the chairman, the outgoing chair of SICA International. So I went to the meeting and Leonard was running the meeting and they were all talking like a little crazy. I mean, nobody seemed to know anything about what they were doing. And that kind of at the end of before lunch, I said a few things and whatever it was, and then we went to lunch. And at that time, my daughter was older, yeah, because she said to me, Dad, you got to come and see these paintings that somebody had hanging. and they were some of Leonard Hitchcock's paintings. And they were similar to his father's paintings, you know, Harold Hitchcock. Are you familiar with Harold Hitchcock?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen his paintings.
Oh, okay. So they were similar, you know, but nothing like Harold's paintings, you know. So when I went back to the meeting, the SICA meeting in the afternoon, I said to Leonard, hey, Leonard, how would you like me to put your paintings in my gallery in Carmel? He said, wow, great, brilliant, brilliant. That was his, the way the English speak. And then he said, what about my father's paintings? And I almost fell on the floor. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do, you know, do his paintings. He said, because he had a guy who was representing him who was cheating them. And he hadn't sold a painting or been paid for a painting in like a couple of years. So he asked if I would represent. So I said, definitely. And I had to wait about a month or so till this guy's contract was up. You know, and then I was able to get Harold's paintings. And in the meantime, I forgot what I was going to say. I guess I wasn't going to say it. So anyway, and then the Spokane went on. I sang some of my songs in Spokane and some of that, and came home, and there was this woman who was working in the I was in the back of the courtyard. She was in the front on the main street, and she had sold Harold's paintings in some other state. She was running a gallery. So I told her that I was going to be representing him, you know, and she said, oh, I definitely want to sell his paintings in my gallery, you know, because I knew I shouldn't put them in my gallery. In fact, I closed my gallery and I just opened an office in Monterey because my gallery wasn't doing very well. And Leonard never sent me any of his paintings. He just wanted his father's paintings to be represented, really. So they opened a brand new gallery, which I helped them find, actually, her and a money guy. And I said to them, I invited them to come to my office after I had gotten all of Harold's paintings into my office, just lined up on the wall. And I said to them, look at the paintings and see which ones you want, and just let me know. So they went and they picked out about 10 or 12 paintings or something like that. And I said to them, what I want you to do is to buy these paintings. And I'll make you a special deal. Because that way I know that you'll really try to sell his paintings and not just put them in your gallery and have them hanging on a wall, you know. So they picked out all the paintings, and the price came to me, and I made them a price, and they bought all the paintings that they picked out. And so before anything, I sent Harold a check, I think like $40,000 or something. I don't remember the exact. at least 25,000, but it must have been more. And they were shocked. I mean, they couldn't believe it, that it just happened so fast.
Yeah.
And they had a really nice gallery and on the main street, you know, and they sold a lot of his paintings, a lot. And I represented some other artists also. So, and then they wanted to open a publishing company, and I was one of the partners in the publishing company. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And so sales seemed to be a talent that I had, you know, that I could really do, you know, and run a business. So I was really happy about that. And then I became national helper. Actually, that whole time that I represented Hitchcock, I was a national helper. I was serving one term. And then after that, I went back to being a local helper for 4 years, and then I became a national helper again for 4 more years. So, and when I was national helper, we were one of the very few national helper groups that made helpers resign, that were problem helpers. I don't recall hardly ever happening before. And so there were some guys who really needed to not be active helpers, not be helpers anymore. And with testing with them and their group of helpers, you know, it was always everybody received they should resign, except for the person who needed to resign. They always received they should go on, you know. But they all had to resign, and we're not happy about it, but you know, that's life. It just has to go on. In fact, I just read a talk recently, and you might have read it also, where Bapak said about the growth of Subud, and maybe it was Bapak. And he said, Subud cannot grow until there were enough helpers, real Bapak's helpers. And there has to be at least 50 to maybe 100 of real Bapak's helpers who really could explain and answer members' questions and other helpers' questions, and not make helpers who should not be made helpers, you know. And he said, and Bapak is okay with that, because it must be the will of God that it be like that, because Bapak can't do that. He can't open, you know, take care of so many people and answer all the questions and do all the openings and all that stuff. So it was a very interesting talk, and it really pertained to what has happened in our country and in the world with this COVID business and stuff like that. There's so many helpers that feel that they don't have to read Bapak's talks, they don't have to listen to anybody, just follow their own receiving, although they don't know what the source of their receiving is. They know they're receiving something, but I mean, there are helpers who don't believe in God, there are helpers who, all kinds of different crazy helpers, following other paths and stuff like that. So I was happy to read that talk, because it helped me to just surrender the whole thing to God, because until that happens, it looks like Subud will keep going backwards, you know. So it's interesting life in Subud. Oh, then I became the SICA USA chair at some point in these years. Don't ask me when, how. My mind is just. And I went to a lot of the people who were on the board were in Portland. And Manuka was coming up. And I said, well, let's have our first meeting before Manuka starts. So I went up to Portland and met with the group, the board, and I said, many of us don't really understand what SICA is or what it's all about. And my receiving was to have workshops about that. And I said that, but the first workshop is going to be with the board, because the board needs to know. So, and we couldn't get into the Subud house, so we had to do it in somebody's house or something. And we did a bunch of testing and this and that. And because I said to them, I'm not going to do anything unless I feel moved to do it. And they looked at me like I was from Mars, So, so we did a bunch of testing, and they were able to receive enough for themselves so that they could go along with that kind of a situation. So we had, then we went to Manuka and we had 2 workshops there. And again, and that kind of started the workshops, the SICA workshops that I was having. And I was doing fairly regularly, but not in the beginning, because in the beginning, we needed to get our 501c3. We didn't have that. We didn't have a website. And we were able to get all that done. So then we got more into the workshops, more hot and heavy into the workshops. And it's amazing how many people really didn't understand about how to use the latihan in their life, how to, what is Subud, what am I doing here? I mean, they just didn't know, So, and then the national helpers got angry at me for doing these workshops. They said that I was doing helper work and I should not be doing these workshops. So I said to them, well, let's digress. Did you not test me in unanimously? And they said, yes, we did. I said, well, and then I started to have these workshops. And they said, well, that's helpers work. They weren't happy about it. They were angry. But I kept doing it because I just always follow my jiva, my guidance. And eventually, as people kept having good experiences in the workshops, they would tell the national help about it. And then they just left me alone. They didn't, they just forgot about it. And then when I was, I served 3 years, and I got out of that. And then I changed the workshops into latihan and daily life workshops. And I did that all around the country. I mean, and even the World Congresses, I did them 2 World Congresses, and I did them in California congresses, East Coast, I mean, all of them, and in groups. And people had really wonderful experiences in those workshops, you know. So essentially, that's been most of my, now what I'm doing is mostly on Zoom. I do a lot of stuff on Zoom. And so maybe you have other questions you'd like to ask.
I think you pretty much covered everything. Is there anything more that you would like to add?
A song.
Okay.
Susila, Bodhidharma, a gift from God above. Susila, Bodhidharma, is filled with peace and love. Susila, Bodhidharma, the Holy Trinity, God's guidance in this world for all humanity. In this world is the power of God, guiding us both from near and from far. In this world and beyond every star. Susila means living in accordance with God's will. Buddhi is God's power, deep within us still. Dharma means surrender to the one Almighty God, with patience, acceptance, and faith that fills your heart. In this world is the power of God, guiding us both from near and from far. In this world and beyond every star. In this world and beyond every star. Amen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.